This podcast is presented by Castrol Edge Euro, the #1 brand recommended by technicians in Europe. Did you know that almost 50% of European vehicles in Canada come factory filled with Edge Euro? Offer better oil. Offer your customer Castrol Edge Euro. Questions? Contact your local auto parts distributor, or Wakefield Territory Sales Manager, or customer service at 1-800-268-5339. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Andrew Ross. Now, this episode, we're going to change things up a little bit. I've got Murray Voth on board from RPM Training. Welcome onto the podcast again, Murray.
Nice to see you, Andrew.
Yeah, we're gonna just change things up a little bit in honor of my Jobber Nation shirt here. We're going to talk about what jobbers can do to really effectively serve their service provider customers. And what service provider customers are looking for, but also maybe what they can talk to their service providers about that they might be able to see because they have a broader view of something sometimes to help them help themselves, right?
Exactly.
Does that sound fair, Murray?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I think we can all agree that there's some kind of baseline things that jobbers really can do to just build that relationship beyond, hey, I got parts for you from their service providers. Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, it's a good place to start. In fact, as you're phrasing your question, it comes to mind a conversation I had at AIA in March about, and I was speaking to sort of the jobber audience, wholesale distributor audience, about the fact that I don't know what it is. The numbers are not exact for this podcast, but let's just say around 75% of all aftermarket shops are 9 employees or less. Close to 60% are 4 employees or less, right? And so I was reminding the jobbers that their whole business is built on a lot of small people selling the stuff for them, right? And to give some thought to that. A bit of stress there in some ways, but give some thought to that. But the thought that has now come to me from that conversation, Andrew, is I think, and by the way, I want to preface all of this by saying I have great friends, contacts, and associates in many jobber companies that I work with, right? RPM Training is parts company agnostic per se. We work with many people raising the industry, raising each of their clients up. And I've got lots of friends, and we have these conversations, right? So this is not coming outside of there's context to what I'm going to say here.
Right, yeah. Sure.
But what I was going to say is I think all of us in business, but I'm going to point to the jobbers, forget who their ultimate customer is, but from a different perspective than what they do. So for example, historically, when I had my shop, I would get approached by my suppliers to put posters of shock absorbers up on my wall of my waiting room, or to put displays of brake pads up, right? Or to put this up or to put that up. And it was like the jobbers and the manufacturers of the parts were trying to bypass me and sell product to the driving public.
Right.
And there's a couple of people driving around in 2026 that might be aware of a brand name, but most people are clueless. So why would you market through me directly to them, right? What we need to think about is, what is the person who's going to receive my part going to experience? Is the part going to be delivered in a timely fashion so that that person's car is finished in a timely fashion, right? Is that quality of that part going to be such so that the owner of the car doesn't have to come back in 30 days to have it replaced under warranty, right? So the idea is what is the end user's experience with your product? So not just the shop owner, because at the end of the day, quote unquote, the shop owner is not the end user. The owner of the car is the end user that's receiving it, right? Am I making sense so far?
Oh, no, 100%. Yeah, as opposed to, again, with the exception of probably tires, most consumers aren't really that aware. I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, and performance enthusiasts and certain people who really like to dig into that. So aren't really aware of many of the brands from the aftermarket that go into servicing their vehicles. But the shops and the technicians who are putting those products into use, they sure are, or they should be.
Yeah.
And this goes to the core of what you're saying, which is where is that conversation being directed? Is it focused on these are the parts that will help you help deliver this service level to your customer,
Yes. Yes.
keep them
Yeah.
on the road? What can I do to help you? We have just for example, you could have amazing products in your portfolio at a jobber level, but if the service levels, as we call them on distribution side, to be able to deliver those products on time or promptly aren't there, well, that doesn't really deliver for the shop, then, does it? Right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Just as an
Exactly.
example. Yeah.
Yeah. And so jobbers, and again, to give credit to the challenges that we all face, but jobbers include, I want to acknowledge that they are been dealing with parts proliferation at a scale that's unprecedented, right? Supply chain challenges caused by myriad of things that are going on in the world, manufacturing challenges, tariffs. I understand that our suppliers and our parts friends and jobbers here are having a very challenging life. But what I want to do in this session is help them lift their head out of that that quagmire of challenges and look outward and go, right? There are 25 million cars on the road in Canada, and there's X number of these cars are going to the aftermarket, and all of these cars are going to need X number of oil and filters and brakes and pads and rotors and sensors and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, how am I going to get more of mine into a shop rather than my competitor, right? At the end of the day, it's that whole piece. Well, reputation, I think, is really important to the good shops. So people didn't buy that set of shocks and struts because of the brand of shock and strut that it was. They bought it because Mario's Automotive and Mario's service advisor Kim said, we recommend these shocks for these reasons, right?
Right.
And then the shocks perform as per the way Kim described them. After the client pays their bill, that vehicle rides the way it was designed to ride after those shock absorbers. So the brand reputation is not as important as the shop's reputation, right?
Right.
And so thinking about how do I protect my client's reputation, right, on their outward facing. Now, that does bring the challenge of a lot of unorganized shops, poorly branded shops, disorganized shops, shops that are just about price, right? I understand the jobbers probably rolling their eyes at me going, yeah, Murray, you get to work with all the good shops. Um, but I think if you focus on the good shops, it will dribble down and filter down to that piece. So piece number one is protect the reputation, which then involves um, you know, making sure that we're sourcing quality. Like, and I know that's challenging, but there's a lot of complaints now from my clients about the quality of parts, and they're not blaming any particular company. It's just like an issue,
Yep.
a global issue. And the theory floating about, and I don't know if anybody can confirm this, you probably would be better, is that we're now seeing the parts manufactured in COVID are now in the supply chain. So all that disastrous stuff 4 or 5 years ago is now being filtered into the system because there seems to be a blip in the warranty amount that we're seeing in parts. Now the numbers, the jobbers would say the
Sure.
numbers don't
Well,
lie, and they would give us other numbers, right?
there
But
has and certainly been an unprecedented disruption in the supply chains globally over the last few years, and that is absolutely bound to have an
yeah,
impact in some areas, in some ways, from
yeah,
some suppliers or some parts of some suppliers' lines, because it's
yes.
not always monolithic. It's just bound to have an impact there,
Well, and
um,
and
and
yeah,
sometimes it's surprising and unexpected ways, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So then let's flip the tables for the shop owners listening and go. Um, be organized and stop causing your suppliers to be hoist hostages.
right.
A hoist hostage. I was taught that by one of my
Hoist
jobber
hostage.
friends,
Tell me what.
right?
Tell me. I can guess, but
So,
let's talk
so
about what's a hoist hostage.
a traditional, old school, disorganized shop runs this way, right? I'm the service advisor. You're my client. So Andrew phones. I answer the phone. Hey Andrew, how can I help you? My brakes are squeaking. Oh, no problem. Bring it down. We got a spot on the hoist. We'll inspect it. Let you know what you need. You bring it down. I pop you in there, and sure enough, you need front pads and rotors. And they're like, Andrew, could we get that done for you today? Well, and I said I can get it done. I can get it done by noon for you. And then you say, sure, if you get it done by noon, I'll get you to do that because I'm terrified that I'm not going to make the sale. So then now I'm on the horn calling my jobber going, I need these pads and rotors now because the hoist is tied up, right? That car is hostage, but I've now transferred the hostage feature of that situation over to the jobber. Now I'm holding them hostage because that I can't get that job done. And so
Right.
then I begin to call around whoever can get it to me the fastest. And that's a practice that I abhor, but there are shops still doing that
It
today
still happens,
where they
right?
call 5 places and then whoever gets them there first gets the brake job and then the rest go in the return bin, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's not fair to
Right?
anybody in in
So,
the kind of supply chain and the local supply networks on that, but
right.
it's absolutely still happens, and you know, and
So,
you end up putting uh, the availability. Not that there's anything wrong with availability, but like the most available and quickest delivery, regardless of product quality
yeah. So,
necessarily, or
yeah.
service levels, or even frankly proper fit. I mean, it goes on the car and it's maybe not quite right. It goes on, and maybe if it comes back tomorrow, well, so what? You know, you
Yeah.
know, it's
Right. But then,
sale completed, right? So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
So,
I think we can all agree that that's not necessarily the best way to run a shop, but it does happen. So I know we
yeah.
said we were going to talk about what jobbers
Sure. Yeah. Instead
should
of,
do
yeah.
to get to the shops, but you know, obviously it's a two-way street here, right?
It is a two-way street, right? So imagine a world where I say the phone rings and you say, you have your situation. I say, Andrew, at this point, I'd be happy if you brought your car down. The best I could do is one of us will do a test drive with you to confirm the noise or the symptoms that you have. At that point, we'll be able to decide when we'll actually be able to do a full inspection. Once you're here, we'll have a better idea of that. So you bring it in, we do the test drive. I say, listen, Andrew, it's 10 now. I have a technician available by 11:30 to do a full evaluation. And then depending on what we find there, on parts and technician availability, we'll determine whether we can get that job done today or we'll have to push it into tomorrow. Would that be okay with you? So I communicate my commitment level along the way because I have to be realistic that maybe I have a technician that has a job that goes sideways on them, right?
Right, right,
Or whatever, or something does free up sooner and I can inspect your car sooner, right? And those are the shops that are actually more profitable because, right, they're more organized, they're selling their
right.
time better, and
More
then the
efficient,
jobbers are much, right, and then jobbers are much happier to deal with them. And here's the thing for the shop owners listening is guess who gets better service? The
right?
more organized you are, the more service you're going to get from the
Right,
jobber, right?
right, right.
So,
Yeah, and I
um,
think from you know, the part of this conversation, I know I pull from your expertise more than is fair, but you know, one of the things that's certainly happening with a lot of shops is they're just going straight into the scheduling mode because they're just busy. Good shops are busy. They're just busy, and they're you know, customer comes in and says I have an issue, and they're like, okay, we'll take a look at the inspection. How does a week Tuesday sound?
right.
You know, and that's not
Oh,
pushing them off to be mean, but if the car's drivable and all these things, you know, how does a week
yeah,
Tuesday sound? Got a noise, it's
yeah,
making noise, like is it drivable, is it something, like what's the
yeah,
deal, is
yeah,
you know, and oh yeah, it's fine, but I'd like to get it looked at, and okay, well, you know, week Tuesday we have an opening, we'll do an inspection, and based on that inspection we
exactly.
will then see what it needs if you want to do it, and
Yeah,
then we will schedule out.
yeah,
But you're a lot of shops are now a week, 2 weeks out,
yeah.
uh, or
And
more, in something
or
depending
more.
on location, town, all
Exactly.
that. Um,
Yeah.
which again, from a jobber standpoint, they should be aware of what their shops are doing, like the how their shops are going about it. Obviously, shops are all different, and not
Yeah.
expecting that necessarily um,
Hmm.
shops aren't organized. Just to be able to serve them at a level, it's like don't bring me the breaks now for necessarily for a job I have 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
Like it might not be necessary, you know.
Yeah. But 2 or 3 days ahead, depending on the
Yeah,
size of the
sure, yeah,
shop, would
everything's
work
staged to be
perfectly,
wonderful,
right?
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So,
here I am
yeah.
weighing in on this stuff too. But I just think it's really important to be connected with how your shop, especially your most loyal shops,
Yeah.
are currently, what their flow of business is and how they're organizing their business
Yeah.
to be able to serve them
Yeah.
on that level, and not yourself be adding panic into the situation by, like, I don't know, showing up with stuff that's not due for weeks or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Um, I don't want to fall into the trap of talking about shop scheduling because we're talking about jobbers here. So,
Yes.
on that note, I want to talk about scheduling from a different standpoint, and then I want to talk about pricing a little bit too, because that's
Yes.
always what this stuff comes down to, right? So, as far as scheduling goes, I don't know how many jobbers currently still have what we used to call the road salesperson calling on shops, right? Calling on a shop monthly, weekly, sometimes doing the warranty write-ups or the return write-ups, dealing with cores and stuff. I hear that it's still a thing with some companies and some shops are experiencing it. And I'm hearing that some companies are doing less of it or stopped. And there's some companies, the newer players in the game, aren't actually even offering that service. It's all order online, you do your own stuff with them, right? So it's kind of a changing landscape from my perspective. And I probably need to hear back from the audience about that piece. But one of the things that really helped me back in my day and continues to really help shops today is for the regular jobbers that call in a shop is to have scheduled appointments, right? And so, I still remember Jerry from one company was Wednesdays at 2 because that was a
Right.
good timing for him and for me. I didn't have to dictate fully, like just negotiated that. And
Yep.
then Darren from the other company, because I had my first call, my second call, would come on Thursdays at 2, right? And I had a time, it was booked, it was on my own personal calendar, like my management calendar.
Yep.
The company all knew, my staff all knew that Murray was going to be meeting with the jobber rep at that point to discuss issues or products and stuff like that. And so that's an important thing too. So, that professionalism, offering that a kind of appointment with your root and see if that can work as well.
Yeah. Scheduling sales calls is super important and super respectful for if you're a jobber salesperson, you cannot emphasize this more too
Yeah,
much that, being respectful of your shop
yeah,
customers' time is critical to your success in
yeah, yeah,
retaining and building that
yeah.
customer's business. Treat them like a professional business owner.
Hmm.
Don't just show up. Hey, how you doing? Even if they're your best buddy, like respect their business because they need to know yours. And if you're organized, I got a sneaking
Yeah,
suspicion that kind of starts to be contagious, right? You bring some organization into that
exactly.
relationship,
It does.
it
You
kind of
can lead the
builds on
way.
that, right? It's professional, it's
Yeah,
organized, it can be super friendly still, and you can still
yeah,
talk about your sports and your friends and all of this other stuff. But that's
yeah,
it's just the best way, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then that just led to a thought about an experience I had, and I always use this example. One of my best experiences with a salesperson from a parts company. Um, they listened to, we would have conversations and we would talk about product lines and different things like that. And so I brought up the topic of how OE, originally equipment batteries in most vehicles seemed to last much longer than any aftermarket brand I had sold, right? So on average, whatever, without using any brands, these particular, if I bought a new car, that battery would last 5 to 7 years. Any other replacement battery would be 3 to 4. And this guy said to me, well, I know exactly why. He said it's because they make a better battery for those cars because those cars sit on the lot. They sit in the shipping yards and they sit in the dealership lots. And so they're not being run, they're not being charged. And so they need a better battery that will hold up to those circumstances of not being used and charged. And I said, oh man, it'd be nice if we could access those. He says, we actually have that a product line made exactly the same way. And
Right.
I'm like, and he said, they're like whatever, 45 or $50 a year cost more. Well, I forget the dollar amount. I don't
Yeah.
care. I says, to me, a customer's going to pay $100 more if the thing lasts 2.5 more years. And this, right, I'm way prouder to sell that, right? And so the your team members, the jobbers, being aware of your product lines that have a good reputation, that solve problems for shop owners and technicians and stuff like that. That's where sales are made as well, right
What a
on that
great point.
information.
What a great point. And that sort of
So
segues into you sort of introduced it, to talk a little bit about pricing and many jobbers and many shops too. They go, pricing just it becomes like the foundational kind of
yeah,
base for the
yeah,
relationship, which is really too bad because
yeah,
yes, pricing obviously matters. And anybody who says it doesn't matter at all is fooling themselves, but it doesn't it's not the only thing. So tell me
Correct.
about from a shop perspective, what are they looking at on a pricing
Well,
and a margin standpoint? Because that goes in there too. And where are they landing and looking for from a jobber standpoint these days?
well, I want to introduce this topic with two overarching themes that I think about. One is if price was the most important thing in the global economy, we wouldn't have an economy
Right.
because it would always be the bottom, it would always be the lowest price. So there's always a differential. There's always a reason why somebody can charge a little more for something than somebody else, right? There's a value proposition why that works, right? And so we have to understand that there's always going to be a price difference, right? We're never if you want to go be the cheapest, then good luck with that, right? Is what I say. The second thing I've been giving a lot of thought to, and I keep forgetting every time I bring this up when I'm in a conversation like this, is to go to and research the terminology, the business terminology. But I understand two ways of doing business. One is from my costs down. So in other words, I'm going to make money by reducing my costs,
Right.
right? So I'm going to sell this, and if I buy a cheaper part, I can make more money because I paid less for it at whatever that top line is that I'm going to charge for. Or I'm going to find a cheaper accountant, or I'm going to find cheaper building to rent,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a whole idea of, but at a certain point, how low can you go?
Yeah.
You won't have an accountant, you won't have a building, and you won't have parts delivered, right?
Right.
So at a
Yeah.
certain point, as opposed to a cost that you've analyzed that you know is your fixed cost and you've done the best you can with it. And then we go above that, we go the margin above it. And we charge higher to make the money. And then we figure out how do we get people to pay the higher price for something for that value. So, for example, we talk about a shop attaining between a 45 and 50% parts margin. Um, it's not because my clients who hit 50% get a better buying power. I've actually had people ask me, well, where do your clients buy their parts? I've never seen anybody with a 50% margin. I say, they buy the exact same part as you do. They just charge more for it. You're
Yeah.
allowed to do that? I'm like, well, yeah, the word is suggested
Yeah.
list, right? And so I just want the audience to understand that we go higher, right, to make our margins. But here's the thing for the jobbers, all right? I believe it was simpler in my day, right? There was and a shout out to, you all know Zed, right?
Yes. Yeah. Zara.
uh, he's done some articles and some thinking about going back to the old days where we had a manufacturer's list and then we had these sheets where there was discounted down and we knew where we stood, right? Job or less. We knew where we stood and we could work our way down. And we knew what the pricing structure from our main call, our second call, and then the differentiation in our purchases was the product line, our awareness of its value, its quality, stuff like that, and then delivery, service on the phone, that kind of stuff like that, right? So it was a simpler time.
Yeah. So just quick
Now,
shout out to we're talking about Zara Wishloff from APD Auto Parts Distributors out of Red Deer and Environs. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. And again, I've been avoiding brands and companies, but because he has a passion for that and he has a title for that pricing structure, which I have forgotten. You might remember it, Andrew.
Yeah.
But he is advocating for the industry to go back to that kind of better pricing structure. Now I don't know if he uses the word transparency because there's another definition of parts transparency that is out there that I think is confusing things. Anyway, so what's happening now is, and again, the parts companies, learned that they had to do some margin adjustments and go from cost up and stuff like that. So there was some business rationale for the way they changed things, right? That way. But having said all of that, you now have companies coming to market with programs. So loyalty programs, they come with rebate programs, they come with trips, they come with all these incentives to buy from them. And I believe that a lot of that is muddying the waters,
Right. Right.
right? And so let me reiterate what I would like if I was currently a shop owner now, listening to my clients. If I was a shop owner now, I would like to be able to choose a line of spark plugs that I know are good for that application. Okay, so and both of my jobbers um, sell those. All right, exact same product line, exact same product, a good application for that vehicle. All right. Now I look at my price, my cost from that company, and I get pay this much for this one and this much for that one. And now I have a choice to decide, is price most important to me, or what other decisions do I make there?
Sure.
Well, first of all, are they responsive to my online order or responsive to the phone call? That might lead me that way. Or is delivery better? Is their warranty program better? And then I make my decision and I buy that. Now, if I get offered a loyalty program on top of that, like an annual discount off of it, that's fine. That would be something I negotiate in the background. But what some of the jobbers are doing is the pricing structure is always fluctuating. One day that same part will be different price than 2 days later because of algorithms, because of computers. They act, probably a lot of automation. There's probably not a lot of humans thinking about this pricing structure. And shop owners are getting really, really mad because it's a moving target.
Right. Right. Yeah. They don't
Okay.
really know how to price things out.
I will pay you $4 more per spark plug if you don't change the price on me without an announcement of the price change because of whatever factors out there that are there that we
Sure.
understand.
Sure. And there have
Prices
been
go
many of
up.
them from
And I'm gonna
inflationary issues and surcharges on
I get
shipping
it.
to tariffs, all kinds of
But
things. Yep.
progressively, like I know stuff's gonna go up, but don't let me pay
Yeah.
one price for a spark plug one day, another one the next day, and 3 days later, because now my own internal pricing structure, my customers brought one truck in for a tune-up, and the same fleet brings another truck in for a tune-up, and their tune-up is a different price because I didn't look at what I paid that day. This is driving shop owners crazy.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't know
So
what the solution
basically,
is.
if you can do something to smooth the peaks and valleys a little bit on that as a jobber, then certainly do
And
that. And you sort of alluded to the fact too about the incentive side of it. And I know from the past, uh, certain incentives would be afforded to counter people for, this month it's, so and so, even something whether it's a hat or a gift card or a Timmy's card or something. And so suddenly they're selling this brand or pushing this brand.
yeah,
And I guess as a jobber owner, I would just want to ask them to make sure that when your inside and outside sales professionals are doing their jobs, that they have the customer in mind as a long term, not just maybe today I get a spiff for something that may not in fact be serving it. Two things can be true. It can serve my needs to get a free hat or whatever, as well as serving the customer. But if it's not, then they should be serving the customer first, not
yeah,
getting the new hat or whatever it
yeah,
is. I mean, these
yeah.
things do
I
happen. They don't
well,
happen a lot. They happen with sometimes with younger staff members who don't have those long-term relationships, don't understand the benefit of that. But
yeah.
it does happen. You should have an eye out to make sure that everybody knows that the goal at your job or business is to serve your service provider customers in order to win their loyalty over the long haul.
Yes. Yeah. And keep it as simple as possible
Right.
with pricing and with the rest of it. And I know the transparency is when they talk about parts transparency, they talk about anybody in the world can check a price on the internet now for
Yeah.
whatever price, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. I think that, but
Perfect.
I'm talking about a different kind of pricing transparency where the jobber and the shop owner have a relationship, the pricing structure, this is your profile. And if there's going to be changes in the profile, we will let you know.
Right. Right. Okay. I was just kind of wrapping up here. What I'm hearing is really, successful jobbers building that relationship. Be respectful, be organized, even if the shop isn't. Keep them apprised. Don't keep them apprised. Have the conversations. Like treat them like a client. Treat them like you have a relationship.
Yeah.
In ways that maybe seem they're not really one-sided, but shops are busy, and if the shop owner's working in the bays all the time, he's not always going to be able to have all those conversations. But trust me, they'll value it if
Hmm.
if you're upfront with
Yeah.
things. If things are coming down the pike about price changes, let them know as soon as you do. They'll appreciate it. They don't want to get surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, good
Good
stuff.
summary, Andrew. Good summary.
All
Yeah.
right, well, I try. Listen, thanks very much, Murray. This has been great. Thanks everyone for listening. Think about this stuff. It really matters building the relationships, even in times when it's really difficult to know where things are going on a pricing standpoint and a parts supply standpoint and all this kind of stuff. Slow down, be considerate and intentional about what you're doing out
Yes.
there, and
Yeah.
it's the best path. All right, thanks very much for listening, everyone. Catch you next time on the podcast.
listening to the Great Canadian Aftermarket Podcast, brought to you by the publishers of Indie Garage and Jobber Nation. Connect with us online at indiegarage.ca and jobbernation.ca, a brand of Chat Integrated Media.